Assalomu alaykum va rahmatullohi va barakatuh. Xudo kunib jo'r bo'lsin, salomat bo'lsin. امیدواریم که توسط شای جوری بحالی. Shout out to Yamo John, برادر قند, قربان ریش مقبولت. Thank you for sending me those voice notes, bro. I will get back to you as soon as I can. I'm a very shy person actually, so it takes me a lot to prepare for these sessions, but really appreciate it. Yamo John, hope you're well with your beloved family. We've got a very special one today. I've been looking forward. Walaikum salam, Muhtarama Parastash Khanam, hope you're well, your family is well. Thank you very much for being here. Rafi John, of course, Yamo John, thank you very much. Yes, Kandam, I'm very shy. You should know it. Yeah, my eyes may look bloodshot, but I don't smoke weed. قسم به خدا ما چی او کارا را نمیکنم مگم I come out of 14 hours or 15 hours a day, and I had hour and a half of sleep. But this is very important for me. This is way important than my sleep or whatever. I don't care. So yes, I'm waiting for our very honorable guests to join. Thank you very much, Jurgen. Thank you very much appreciated. It's all God gifted. Yeah, Jangda Pantun Nasha, just like I expected, so we can talk about that if you want. All right, here we go. Here we go. Have I invited everyone? Hope so. Hope I invited everyone. Oh, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very happy. Blingistan just left. There's some problem with their internet probably. So great, and such a pleasure to finally sit in front of you. Obviously, a big fan of your work, and we'll talk a lot about that. How was your family? How was your life? How was the studies going? I've heard that extremely busy.
Yeah, I've been super busy. I've started my master's program, so I've been busy with that. But yeah, looking forward to talking to you guys. Blingistan's internet is probably having issues, but
as always, okay. Yeah, she's a fighter. She'll come back. I mean, I can't say enough that I'm a huge fan of your work with Shamayel John. It's beautiful work done with your decolonial therapy. I'm sorry for that. I've been smoking for so long that I don't even realize that I have it on my lips. So I'm sorry about that.
Well, don't worry about it.
Yeah,
I come from
you're very kind.
Of smokers, so I'm used to it.
Well, if you don't smoke, that's a very good thing, because coming from a family of smokers, thank you very much. My pleasure, brother. My pleasure. Always, man. It's pretty hard not to pick it up from childhood. You know, I think I used to put like posters in my house saying that no smoking, and I was like 6 or 7 something. And then my dad got upset because all his friends and himself, they smoke, and they were like, this is rude to my friends and this and that. And then here we are, I think 18 years still on, which pretty bad.
I
I
pretty
think to
common
brag
in
about.
Afghan households, especially among the men, to smoke. In my family, I know a lot of people love to smoke the chilam. It's like not even just the men, but the women, like especially the older
Exactly. Exactly. We have women in our family who smoke, who started with chilam and now they smoke cigarettes. Yeah, I can understand. It used to be, I think it used to be a fashion thing. Salam alaikum, sobha khair.
Hello.
Sobha khair, muhtaram. Look at you, the early bird.
I really hope the internet is gonna work. I really hope so.
Looks good so far, so.
I hope so too. Did you have a bad hair day like me? And I've put like tons of gel on my head just to keep it.
You know that I have a permanent bad hair day until this can get like
Shut
here.
up. Shut up.
Really?
Stop nosing now.
Oh,
Yeah.
come on.
Okay.
It's 8
We
in the
all
morning.
know. We all know.
Give me nods, all of you.
Patting me now. Okay, so Shamayel Jan, just so you know, when you talk, it kind of gets silent between our voices. So before you want to say something, just I don't know, just raise your hand or something. I don't know. So I could just shut up. Yeah.
Got it.
Thank you very much. All right, this is amazing. I have been trying to get this duo on for a very long time, very long time, and finally the pleasure. So I'm not gonna really waste either of your time because I know it's very late for you, Khorake, Aisha, and very early for Shamayel Khan, who's not an early bird like me. Anyway, so.
What? Since when
Yes.
am I not an bird?
No,
Since when?
Well,
at least compared to me, she's definitely an early bird.
Fair
Yeah,
enough.
but I also
Okay.
like.
Okay. Okay. There's
So
one
if you just
early bird. There's what was that? Do
lifting
whatever
the
you
screen.
like. Okay. Lifting this screen. Okay. So we've got an early bird, we've got a not so much early bird, and then you've got a cause here who doesn't actually sleep. So yeah,
That's about
God bless the caffeine. All right, so let's just get into it right away.
Okay.
Aisha Khanam, Shamayel Jan, and we're gonna start with a rapid fire first, and then we're gonna go into knowing a little bit more about Aisha Jan. Okay, so I'm gonna consider yes.
So just give her the rapid fire because you've done it.
No. Sorry. It doesn't work like that, man. I run this shit. Sorry. You're in my territory now. All right, so because you two are, or the duo who came up and worked so hard on decolonial therapy, right? So I'm gonna consider you guys as the duo. So you gotta work your answers together. All right. So first off, if your duo had a name, what would it be?
If what?
If your duo, your team up, you as together, what would you name it as a team, or however you say it?
Honestly,
well,
we could take everything that you and I have in common. We're both mixed. We come from broken homes.
Yeah.
Make that sense.
Yeah, honestly, like it's so astonishing how much we have alike. Also, we're both Momand through our dad's side.
Yeah.
We're related.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
we have a lot.
Yeah.
But I honestly, I don't superstar duo. I might take that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, cool. Okay. I was going to suggest the Momands, but that would be cliche, I think. So yeah, I'm not very creative. I'm sorry. So the superstar Momands.
Today I saw a car with a license plate and it said Pashtun on the license plate. I was just walking downtown. Oh my God.
Well, That's cool.
Very
If I had the money, I think I would have done the same thing, but I would have named it Afghanistan anyways. But that's just me. All right. So, sorry.
There's not enough space on a license plate for Afghanistan. You would have to short it.
Wait, yes, I can. I can. You don't have to ruin my cool punchline, Shamayel John. Thank you. Okay. Yes. Okay. So if you two, Rockstar Momand, if you two had to choose a weapon of choice to fight against the enemies of Afghanistan, what would it be?
acid, probably.
Wow. I love that.
But
We've discussed this.
We've discussed this a lot. It's kind of attached to what we're going to be talking about today. Our country and our people have a lot of healing to do, and sometimes psychedelics help facilitate that a little bit faster.
Yeah.
Especially with men, for fuck's sake, men who can't think about their feelings for more than I don't know 10.
So you meant like acid, as in like the drug acid and taking it. Okay, but just for me to repeat the question, weapon of choice for your enemies. Some of them might just have fun with that. I mean, they want to just pop acid and just have fun.
Their foods and stuff, like it's gonna be.
Okay, at some part of it may be fun, but part of it will also be healing and growing, which is the point.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to say like a pen or a pencil is my weapon, to
stab them in the eye. To stab them in the eye. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I just think.
All right. I get it now. Yes.
I just like our countries. Like we have such a spiritual. We're so inherently spiritual, but that's been repressed, and it's just waiting to come out again. And it makes me sad because I see it in every Afghan, that deep, unique spirituality that's inherent to the land that we come from. Like Rumi, his house is still in Afghanistan. Like if you go there, you can see the ruins of what used to be his house. Like this is, his books are the most read poetry books in the world. Like they actually, Shakespeare's not read as much as Rumi is read around the world. Like we need to understand, like at our core, the kind of Muslims that we are, it's not, like Wahhabi Muslim or Salafi Muslim. It's a very unique kind of Islam that is, it's in sync with our culture. It's not against it. It works in harmony, and we have to rediscover that. So that's why, like me and Shamayel and I, we were as a joke discussing maybe we can give Afghans in Afghanistan acid so they can rediscover their spirituality.
Afghans everywhere, not even just Afghanistan. I think there's some really deep healing to be done with people outside of Afghanistan too, because
I can agree with that, the way you guys just explained it. Okay, because initially what I wanted to know was the enemies. So maybe in order to
But that's the enemies too. The enemies need healing too. We've talked about that.
That's the beauty of the Afghan women, that they even want to heal their enemies. That's the beauty of the empathy that our women have. If it was me, I would choose acid, but I would drop acid on them. So see, that's a man's opinion, which is really wrong. Okay, so if you two together made art, what sort of art would that be? Like, which genre of art would you two choose to work together on?
I feel like
we paint together, I think, because you draw very beautifully.
We also write poetry, so
yeah.
And we write.
So you can Okay.
We're
Okay. So you can paint poetry. Yeah, that sounds really good. So looking forward to that. Really, we are. I'm sure everyone is. So because you two come from a very specific principle of academia, psychology and human anthropology. So I've based these questions mainly on that. For the love of family or for the love of country?
Aren't they connected?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
They are.
The country
Are
is
they?
a reflection of what happens within the family unit. You know, it's the average of all the family units within that country. That's the projection that's created from the average, you know. And I think what's happening on a wide scale in Afghanistan is something that can be studied by examining family in Afghanistan, you know, and their dynamics with each other.
Bravo. I love
Look at
that
the psychologist.
opinion. I know. And I will get back to that in a more in-depth context. Rewrite history or to make the future better?
Make the future
Well,
better.
I don't think you can rewrite history as it actually happened.
Well,
but I think you.
Well, if you could. I don't know. These are just.
Also, that's one of our problems. We've rewritten a lot of history. A lot of our own history has been rewritten.
We can re-examine history through a different perspective, but I don't think you can rewrite what happened.
No.
So I think.
Okay. Wait. By rewriting, I should have explained probably. Rewriting that it could actually change the past. If you could actually change the past. So if you could actually had a magic pen, you could write the history and it would take effect. Or you could work for a better future. Would you change the past or the future?
I believe what we are currently, even though it's so troublesome to see what's happened in our country, I think I was discussing this with Jamshid when I met him, our friend. I said Afghans are in a very unique situation where we've, for generations, been repeating the same mistakes. And we're placed geographically in a location where you have descendants of all these great people, like, you have the Indo-Iranian people here, all these great civilizations, the Turkic people, even Alexander the Great passed through this. It's such a historic region where everyone is, descendants of all these great warrior people. And we have that warrior energy amongst us, like every Afghan is a warrior. And we're placed together, in this one land, all these different warriors from these different tribes. And I think the gift here is learning how to work together, how to learn from each other, how to hone that warrior energy and actually use it in a way where it's productive and helpful for us and the world around us. We are so resilient and such passionate people. If only we could hone that energy in a more productive way, we could do amazing things.
Beautiful. Okay, then Shamayel John is just sitting there to applaud you. So I love that. I mean, with a beautiful smile, she just there to applaud you and support you, which I do agree with. Thank you very much. Okay, this is the last one. If you had to choose living in a house with a hidden but deadly snake and you don't know where that is, okay, or trapped in a room with a wild cat, which one would you choose?
What?
So with the snake, you get more space. With the cat, you see it, but you have smaller. That's what you're saying.
And you can see the cat, obviously. You can see the cat, you can fight the cat, but you can't see the snake and you don't know when it will come out from where. So there's this anxiety of the unknown and the fear of a powerful creature wild in front of you.
I would probably be in a room with the snake, because snakes do not attack you unless you actually do something where they think they're being threatened. So if you stay still...
Boom, mic drops. Psychologist dropped the mic. Psychologist dropped the mic. Okay, I love that. I love that. The whole question was based on that, and beautifully caught. Beautifully caught. Okay, I am starting to really love this session that we're doing. It's going in a very good direction, and I'm just fired up. Stutter extremely.
That's like, what's happening here?
Where these hearts?
No, I said this feels like we're being like tested for our intelligence right now. Like,
we have to pass.
You never know.
We have to pass.
You never know. Hey, you have already passed.
This is what I think sometimes they're trick questions, you know? This is his style, to ask these really difficult questions and just be waiting. That's why I don't like this part of any of the lives.
Okay, so this is very personal. Stutter extremely and live with anxiety, or mute with the highest IQ.
Mute with the highest IQ, you said?
Yeah.
That's like a no. Why would I want to stutter with the highest level of anxiety?
I know, it's
because
the anxiety. Yeah, the anxiety makes it uncomfortable. I wouldn't mind if it was stutter versus mute, but when you have the anxiety, who's anxiety?
Stutter brings you anxiety. Hey, I'm talking from a position of experience, trust me. So, yeah. So, but any clear answer?
You know what helps stutters? I've told you about this. Psychedelics.
Oh, yeah.
Psychedelics.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes. Just offer me one opinion which doesn't involve drugs, please. Okay. Any clear opinions? Any opinions? No?
Yeah, I think being and extremely intelligent would probably be the better option here.
Yeah. No anxiety.
Okay. Thank you very much for just burning down my confidence of 36 years that I try to build every day. And now you should have been better off mute, man, with the higher IQ, bro. You shouldn't have worked on your stutter.
Okay. You really operate from a place of anxiety, or do you just now live with the stutter? Be honest.
Yeah, you have to work on it in order to be comfortable, because every time you stutter, you do get anxious, no matter what you do, no matter where you are, no matter with who you are. Because you might have heard my last session, I stutter a lot when I speak Pashto. For some weird reason, I do. And when I talk to my dad, I stutter a lot comparing to my mom. And it always brings me that anxiety, even though I love my dad. I mean, I'm not scared of him, or I don't feel like being under pressure or nervous, but it does happen. So it took me 36 years, to even be here, and a lot of whiskey, of course.
Get the psychologist to give you a little reading.
I know that would be a paid session. Okay. All right. So this was beautifully done. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
You guys, you ladies answered so beautifully.
Thank you,
so
Aisha, for all of your hard work.
Bravo.
Next,
okay, let's.
One of these lives. Next time I do one of these lives, I'm gonna boycott this round, the beginning round.
Fair enough. Okay. Fair enough.
Through every discussion with the Lemar, you got tested?
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And it's all new questions.
Oh my God.
What do you think? Would I just come up with the same old shit and just keep repeating it?
because you've asked questions to me that you've asked other people. So I was kind of like, maybe you'll ask some of them.
Some of them. Not all of them. Not all of them. Okay, so I will try to go and practice being mute and work on my IQ. Thank you very much for that. All right, Aisha Jan, Khore, sister, tell us something really quickly about yourself and what you specialize. Because I know you have done major in psychology, and my IQ is not high because I stutter. So the masters you have done, it's more related to psychology, technology.
No.
So just give us some.
So my bachelor's
about that.
in psychology, and initially I was interested in studying clinical psychology. I wrote an honors thesis, I wrote an honors thesis on like borderline personality disorder. The reason why I was interested in studying that is because I think among Afghans, the most noticeable personality disorders that I found are borderline personality disorder. I think they're very common. I haven't actually done the study on Afghans to know whether that's true, but like just from observation, and also narcissistic personality disorder. And these are actually two sides of the same coin, except one manifests more in men and one manifests more in women. And usually a lot of households that I look at, the kids usually have a mom who's kind of borderline and a dad who's narcissistic. And that creates all sorts of issues in the children. And I think a lot of it has to do with both of these issues stem from having an insecure ego and not really knowing what your identity is. And I think it's because our identities have been erased, and are being erased right now. And this is the manifestation of that. And then I'm doing my master's. So I wanted to do clinical psych until I became a research assistant at a clinical psych lab. And I realized it was dominated by white people who didn't want to listen to people of color and women of color. And I also realized psychology was, nobody there gave a shit about actually helping people. It was all about how many papers you can publish, and all the data in them is bullshit. Like, you can't even replicate it. So I was like, you know what, this is bullshit. I don't think I can actually heal people by becoming a clinical psychologist. I don't want to be limited by the parameters of what white people say is the way we need to heal people. So I left that, and now I'm doing a master's in user experience design, which is basically every piece of technology you use, it's a user experience designer figured out how this would be accessible to that person. So I'm interested in making technology more accessible to Afghans, especially Afghan women, so they can have access to education and things like that. And on the side, my main passion is becoming a novelist, writing. And I think Shamayel is really into that too. And I think it's because the most profound kind of healing comes from art. It doesn't come from becoming a clinical psychologist. So, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay.
So proud.
When did you two?
So proud of you. I want to read this thesis that you wrote. I didn't even know that that's what you studied. May I ask a question? Now I'm going to end you. Have you found through your work in psychology that there is obviously what psychology, the whole branch of psychology, clinical psychology, however, is dominated by white people, like you said. So did that hamper the way that you would even look at narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, because you're looking at a spectrum that involves people that aren't Afghan. So the baseline of normalcy is somewhere else.
So the reason I was mainly interested in these disorders is because Western psychology says that basically people who have this disorder there's no cure for them. There's no treatment. It is what it is, and all these white psychologists don't want to deal with people that have these disorders. Meanwhile, I think that these disorders are much more common than we realize, and it doesn't have to do with someone inherently being bad, but it's because of the social dynamics and the culture that is around them that has created that. Even in the West, you see, narcissism and BPD in a different way. But in Afghan households, the way I see it is, Afghan women are extremely codependent, and they can't imagine for themselves the life where there is not a man with, they don't have a man in their life. Not every Afghan woman, but, of course, like that's what I've noticed. And when it comes to Afghan men, obviously we've all experienced the narcissism that Afghan men have, but I think it's for them, it's in their, we need to not analyze it in a Western perspective and say, oh, these are bad people, they're just, it's a disorder. But instead we need to see it from a perspective where, the historical events in Afghanistan have led to this, and it's a cultural disorder. It's not really a disorder inherent to the person, if that makes sense. And of course there's a treatment, of course there's a cure. And that's what I hate about Western psychology. Some stuff, like even the idea of there being sociopaths or psychopaths, people who just don't have empathy or they're messed up in the head, that's such a white belief. I had a friend who was actually a diagnosed sociopath, and usually these people are people of color. They tend to get diagnosed as sociopaths. And you have to understand, like, this person grew up in a home where their whole family, like, they were involved in gang violence. That's the environment they grew up in. And then you tell them, oh, you're a sociopath, you don't have empathy, you're messed up in the head. Like, you need to understand the events that have led to this. You can't, and this person, to me, like, as an Afghan, I was like, there's nothing wrong with them. Like, I could see the humanity in them. They were diagnosed with that because I think the psychologist asked them, would you kill somebody if they harmed somebody in your family? And they said yes, without even flinching. And
Right.
I put that response as an Afghan because I know what that feels like, right?
Right. I've been using, I think we've talked about this before, me and you, but I've been using this therapist on the internet who he talks very openly about not quite believing in Western psychology, even though that's what he studied and that's what he practiced. But he is a Black man who has spent most of his time focusing on patients who come from the same communities that he did, which is not only just Black communities in the US, but specifically church going, like going to the Black church. And the things, I mean, it's so applicable to me as an Afghan, so much of what he's saying. But I remember this one thing he said, which was, you just have to think about how therapists, psychologists work with people. Asking a patient on one of these sociopathic or psychopathic diagnoses, do you fear that someone's watching you or someone's following you? And someone just very naturally would be like, yeah, I get nervous around cops. I get nervous around police as a Black man. And then that gets ticked as something paranoia, deep paranoia, when actually all of the systems in place would show you that most people do fear the police, and that's not a paranoia, but that gets tallied into the side that there's something wrong, and then it compounds itself, right? When you keep telling someone that there's something wrong with them, even if you try and destigmatize what you call them, it hurts them more. I'm speaking from experience as well. So
yeah, definitely. Also, it's very ironic because the word psychology actually means the study of the soul, yet because of materialism and because of the Industrial Revolution, the West has really dissociated spirituality from the material world, and the way that they approach mental health is in a way where they don't acknowledge the spiritual aspect of it, and they see it through a very materialist perspective. And I think that's why it can't be a holistic way of bringing healing to the person.
Yeah.
Talking about the personal traumas that you guys kind of pointed out, which could affect somebody's obviously life decisions or their mentality and psychology. Let me just wind back a little bit on the work that you two have been doing beautifully, the decolonial therapy. Tell us something a little bit about that. When did you guys start it, and how did it start? What does it aim for?
It was actually really sweet. It started out of, I don't know what we were talking about, but me and Aisha were speaking one night, and we were talking about how Afghans didn't know their history, I think. And so we quickly just thought of these questions that I went and put on Blingistan, asking the community to answer it. Some of the questions had to do with history, but some of the questions had to do with something that we were already thinking about, right? So we might have asked, do you know about the PDPA, or did Kabul get destroyed in the 90s or in the 80s or whatever? Those kind of questions are history. But then we also ask questions like, are you Afghan first, or are you your religion first? Because we knew what we were about to do. And this started very spontaneously. And as I put one question after the other, we thought of another question, another question, another question. And then when we got the results back, I don't think either of us, I don't know, you tell me, Aisha, I wasn't that surprised. There was moments where I was surprised that people actually knew some of it. But for the most part, I knew it was going to be as shitty of results as we got. We got shitty fucking results. And I knew that that was going to happen. So when we sat, now that we open this can of worms, we have to do something about it. I don't feel comfortable if I ask these questions and everyone says, oh, Kabul was destroyed in the 80s, 100% people are saying that. Well, I can't really, as a person, whatever is the problem with me, arrogance or deep determination to try and fix something in Afghanistan, I couldn't just sit still. So we decided to do this decolonial therapy to teach people, because we understand why people don't know their history. We understand why, if they do know their history, they know it's skewed and as lies and as manipulated stories. And so if we can see all of that, we wanted to try and fix it in people's minds, because I don't think, especially with what we're going to talk about today, if we do not confront our history, there is no point in any of this. Really, there's no point, because we have to be able to confront the history that keeps repeating itself to break the cycle and go forward.
Yeah. And yeah, I remember what spurred the whole thing. I think we saw a post by someone from Afghanistan about how we need to emulate white people because they're the most intelligent people and most civilized.
Yes, I remember. Yeah, it was about it. It started with like a series of comments that was Kambozi, and me and you were defending something, and then this guy was, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Emulate white people, please. Like, it's just the most ridiculous thing to hear.
Yeah, I think that's the issue that I a lot of Afghans that believe progressiveness implies being Western. And I think the whole reason the world is in its current chaotic state is because of the West. So it's for Halloween, I actually wanted to dress up as a colonizer, but I changed my mind because I wanted to make fun of them.
What would you wear if you were doing?
Oh, I went to the costume shop today and I found like a coat like for white people, like the British wore the red tails, like coats with the tails and whatever. Maybe I should dress up as a colonizer, because they're fucking scary.
Exactly, no doubt. Going into a little bit in depth about this, our history and our people, and what do you think, in simple words, as coming from a human anthropology part, what is culture? How would you describe culture?
Well, I did a little bit when we did the diaspora passing on What Any Love, and I think culture it's both a reflection of the people of the place, but also the people inform the culture. So it's a loop that goes. And it has to do with identity and lifestyles and practices and all parts of your day-to-day life and what it means to be from that place.
In a psychology point of view, how much effect does culture has on people's mind?
Well,
does it play a very vital role, or it depends where you
yeah,
are?
so like for example, the way that people even see things, for example, in right now in a globalized world, you see people from the East and West intermingling. So for example, in Asian cultures, like in China, eye contact, looking at each other's eyes, is actually something that's very bad, but in the West it's a good thing. So it affects everything, you know, your body posture, how you talk to others, what you think is appropriate, inappropriate. It affects every dimension of your life. And you see that now in a globalized world, how these people from different cultures, how they misunderstand each other through their interactions, because you see these different cultures not meshing together properly, which I find interesting. But at the same time, like personally, I think a better word for culture, like I personally prefer heritage, because it's something that you inherit from your ancestors. And I think there's a spiritual dimension to that. You also inherit their trauma and their gifts, right? So, for example, like my interest in poetry and writing, I think a lot of it has to do with my grandfather, who was a poet. And that's why he named my mom Petty Koikov. But I think when you're dabbling in things like for me, when I'm writing poems, I feel like I'm connecting with my ancestors, you know, and that's something I've actually learned from one of my Indigenous friends. They've told me that one thing they told me that really made me realize I can't help the world if I don't help my own community is they told me like to help the world, you must first help yourself and your community, and then that ripples into the world. You can't help the world, your community behind, you know?
Exactly.
And that makes me realize, oh, wow, you're right. You know, my karma, if you want to call it karma, is the karma of my ancestors that I've inherited. And they even told me, like, sometimes the dreams you have, they're actually the dreams of your ancestors, the memories of your ancestors, you know, that's in your blood, you know. And oh, that's pretty deep, you know.
Just like the that we inherently have this, or most people have this fear or paranoia of dark. I think it comes from a very long time ago when if if I'm wrong, please correct me. When humans hadn't actually found out to light a fire, or when they were being hunted by these animals at night. And I think that's where, as far as I've heard, that this whole fear of the dark, that people feel uncomfortable with the dark, comes from. And that, as you said, that proves that we inherit a lot of things. Quickly, what's the criteria of someone calling themselves native of a country? Is it because of you were born or your forefathers? How many generations does it take for a person to be called from land, from a specific place?
Identities are fluid. You know, like for example, and the idea of someone being indigenous, I think a good thing, a country to study would be Palestine, Israel for that. So, you know, Jewish people claim that they're the indigenous people of that land. and Palestinians also claim that they're indigenous. And of course, there was a Jewish presence there initially. And in my perspective, Palestinians, of course, because they've been there for much longer in recent history, you know, they have more of a claim to being the indigenous people of that land, even though once upon a time there were Jews there, but they weren't white Jews, you know. They were brown Jews, and the Jews that do have an indigenous claim would be the Mizrahi, for example, over the Ashkenazi Jews that are there. So I think it's a very nuanced thing. And even in Afghanistan, you see the same issue with invaders becoming indigenous people. Like even Pashtuns, Tajiks, we were invaders at one point. Afghanistan, at one point, the indigenous people that lived here were actually Dravidians, who are now found in southern India, and the invading Indo-Iranians pushed them out to southern India, where they're now concentrated. So everyone in this land was once an invader, but now we're indigenous to it. So I think the concept of it changes over time, you know? Yeah.
And especially if you look at modern...
Raise your hand first. Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, that's it.
When you look at modern nation states, and Afghanistan is actually a very problematic case of that, of how it was built and 300 years ago. But if we're going to look at it through there's something about looking at indigenous people to the land that has to do with spirituality that I find when you're talking about modern nation states and kind of anything that goes with bureaucratic shit like this, you start walking a really dark path. You know, there's plenty of examples that you can think of. Like, for example, UAE. The UAE's test for your indigeneity to get a passport from them so that you get all of the benefits of the UAE is really, really rigid. It's like you must prove that every fucking forefather of yours was Emirati for past 200 years. And I think that gets a little dangerous, because why should I don't want someone to take away my indigeneity for Afghanistan because I have a Tamil grandma. That's not fair, you know? So yeah. I don't think it should be, it shouldn't be nitpicked to the point of danger and to the point of actually creating more problems and ostracizing other people.
So if you want to create that for the lack of term or my illiteracy criteria, how would you think it should fit?
Well, I don't think you have the issue with Afghanistan like you do with many other countries of intermingling recently, in the sense that very few people, except for maybe Russian soldiers during the 80s who deflected, there's not really immigration into Afghanistan in the past like 80 years because of war. There isn't a person who's from China that's like, you know, I think I'm going to raise my kids there. Well, I'm going to raise my kids in Afghanistan.
We do have the issue of a lot of South Asians claiming they're still Afghan, like, you know, the Pathans in Pakistan and India, like Imran Khan, for example. He's very problematic because he claims Afghan or in origin, and thinks that's his way of having a pass at colonizing Afghans. Right. And that's a very, very problematic for us, you know, like, so it is an interesting question in that sense. You know, when it comes to people like Imran Khan or the Pathans in Pakistan or India or what have you, I think a criteria for that would be, do the people of Afghanistan consider them Afghan? You know, are they considered Afghan? Yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you just took away some of our superstars, because Amir Khan, Shah Rukh Khan, Feroz Khan, they all consider themselves to be Afghans. So if we don't consider Imran Khan, then we can't even claim them as Afghan. We lost a traitor politician and some superstars.
So some of of the celebrities
And
are actually like Madhubala was actually Pashtun, and her dad
of course,
he wanted to make
yeah.
a movie called Pashtun or something, but it didn't work out. Um, but I think when Shah Rukh Khan is actually, a lot of people think he was Pashtun, but he's actually Hindko. It's a bit different. They're like in Peshawar next to
Yeah.
Pashtuns, but they're not Pashtun. But like, to me, I don't care if your ancestor was Afghan and you're claiming that I have Afghan ancestors. It's problematic when you're using that for a specific purpose that hurts Afghans,
Right. You
Yeah.
know why? Because this is not only a problem with people in Bollywood or people in Pakistan's government, but it's also a problem in the diaspora. I don't really know if it's fair to use an Afghan ancestry without actually, being Afghan, because that's not how does that make any sense? You just have a DNA and you're not actually doing anything of
It
the
reminds me of,
culture, lifestyle, and whatever. And also, just one thing that I have to say is the this whole fascination of Southeast Asia, or however the Indian subcontinent, Pakistan included in that, is with Afghans and especially Pashtuns is problematic. I think a lot of these famous people coincidentally having Afghan blood is part of the way that they look at us. Because if you look at a film in Bollywood made about Afghanistan, it's not like they get us correct in any way, even though I do
I
find
never did.
Indians our strongest allies genuinely because of it's in their blood of ancestry. They got it from their ancestors that we worked together at some point. They have some kind of natural inclination to being our allies. But at the same time, there's just too many people that are famous in that part of the world that have Afghan ancestry because it's fetishized for how we look, because of how beautiful these people are, because it gives it a little bit of exoticness and makes someone different. And it honestly has to do with the subcontinent dealing with the repercussions of British Raj and still having problems with fucking hating themselves. They would rather be Afghans than be themselves, you
yeah,
know?
first cream, like cream in India. I think it was in the 30s that it came out. It was called Afghan Snow. It was the
Okay. Okay.
uh,
Oh,
so a lot of it has to do with fetishizing Afghans for being slightly lighter than them, but that has to do with British colonization. But it even predates that. It has to do with also the Aryan invasion into India, which caused the caste system that you see now. So it's very, very deeply seated. And personally, I actually feel like on average, Southern Indian women are way hotter, but that's just, my opinion.
Thank thank you.
raise your hand, hey? Okay, so go- going back to that, uh, I went around all these questions just to build for a specific thing. Okay, so who can claim to be native, or what is culture? How do we live by a culture? How does it evolve? Blah 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 blah. Just to come back to this one point, which has always fascinated me, and I find the roots of what's happening today, some of it, but fundamentally, is in that little code that we always love to use, is Afghans or warriors. Okay. Yeah.
Great.
hmm
Right. Okay. Okay. Now you all already know what I was about to ask. So shoot, Shamayel John.
Well, the negative part of that saying, or whatever you want to call it, that this part of our identity, that it's tied to that we must inherently always be fighting, and that this is part of our destiny and we have to just keep doing it. And while that has benefited us at some points in our history because we had to fight, there was no other option, it does continue to perpetuate this repetition of history that we're very interested in, because it's all founded on this. We must do this, and we must. When you're in a state of war, and the psyche is operating off of a different set of things than it does when it's in safety. And when you're operating from the war place, the warrior place, it doesn't allow a lot of other things to be processed or to be discussed or to even be thought about, because there's no time and there's no energy for that. All of your energy is going to fighting. So yeah.
Sorry. Just I have to add something, and then it's all yours. I just remembered these very real day-to-day things which we hear in Afghanistan. Aisha John, have you been to Afghanistan ever? Like, yes, okay. So maybe, unfortunately, we've all heard this. It's little terms which gets thrown around a lot, right? بچه ما با غیرت از نام خدا با غیرت از چش دوره چپا کردن نمیتونه. Like, my boy is such a warrior, has such an honor that six bolts can't actually put him down. بچه ما غیرت ما ایست که زن ما رو رویش تا بال کسی ندیده. Okay, so this all kind of relates to that, but no one claims that بچه ما تو با غیرت بود که یک خانه بیچاره است او را از نیم ماش خود نان میده.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
because no one finds honor in that.
I mean,
unfortunately,
I've heard
not a lot
say that about their children, but not the men.
Yeah,
like
yeah. That's what I was gonna say. I've actually heard things like that. You know, being با غیرت because you have empathy. I've heard that before. Maybe it's not the most common thing, but also at the same time, it has to do with the definition of غیرت. You know, if one man,
because you know that
not
that the whole warrior thing comes from the غیرت thing. You know,
but
it has a very close related ties to that whole warrior thing. You know, if you don't carry that warrior tradition, بغیرت است.
I
Simple.
avoid the warrior thing as an Afghan. It's not just something that's been created. It's by people saying or wanting to be like that, but it's been created by the history of this land. So yeah, Shamayel was saying something.
But it's the foundation. The foundation has to do with honor being for the motherland and for the community, right? So if it's founded off of being able to die for your country and sacrifice yourself for your people and not letting harm come to your people, well, in a time of not war, wouldn't that be sharing your food? Wouldn't that be doing other things that don't, you know what I mean? So if the definition of actually sat and thought about, it just has to be in service of your people, so it doesn't have to inherently be fighting. I feel like it's quite simple.
Yes, in its essence it should be that simple, right? In its essence that should be غیرت, that should be the warrior code, right?
Yeah,
I mean, all those honorable acts.
You could,
but when we come, yes,
70s when Afghanistan was peaceful, that's how people were. But I think the situation now where people are being forced to, even little boys, now they're joining the Taliban, or what you have farmers joining because of instability as well. Like, that's one of the major factors. I don't think anyone wants to die,
Understandable. That's the thing which I will ask you guys about. When it comes to the whole war, the aspect of war, in a psychological manner, do you think there's a difference of its effects when it comes to people and different age groups? Do they see the war and the effects of war and the traumas of war differently? Do they process it differently? Does it affect them?
Yeah. I've seen a huge, at least personally, between this newer generation in Afghanistan and the older generation. This generation seems to be more passive, actually. The older generation was much more passionate, even if they didn't make the right choices. And I think that's probably because of being burnt out, you know, and also probably because they don't know why should they fight for this country, because they don't even believe in it, you know. And I think the most important thing that you have to have first to fight for a country is to actually believe in it, and we've lost belief in our country, and that's why this generation is so passive. That's why I think the Taliban just swept through Afghanistan, because people just don't want to fight, you know.
Plus there's, you know, a kabillion dollars and superpowers that help facilitate these things as well, you know.
But like before, I mean, when the Russians, even though they didn't necessarily invade Afghanistan the way the Americans did, and Afghans who were fighting them were a little bit brainwashed, and at the same time, they knew that even if they lost everything, they didn't care, you know. But I don't think we have that in the new generation, which is also a good thing. It means they value the things they have. But they also have to work through believing in their country too, and fighting, not like ways to fight for their country that in a non-violent manner, if they, you know, because I understand nobody wants to die, you know. Nobody wants to, people are tired of picking up, you know, guns and, you know, what have you. So you know, I think that's why I think we need to study people like Abdul Ghaffar Khan again, read his books, understand how to fight for our country in a non-violent way. It's so important for us to learn how to do that.
It's like completely antithetical to us sometimes, though, you know, trying to make a peaceful way of doing it. I wonder, I would nominate a bunch of reasons why you may think that this generation is softer, and one of the things that I feel like I've noticed since having lived in Kabul and tried really, really, really hard whenever I had the chance to get Afghans who hadn't been back to Afghanistan to go back. This, I'm taking it really from these kind of conversations. The older generation has a benefit of actually spending time in a more peaceful Afghanistan. I wouldn't say it was perfect, but they were raised in this country of ours with things that they were willing to fight for, whereas now there are these younger generations, depending, it doesn't even matter where they grew up, even it doesn't matter if they were diaspora, if they were in Afghanistan their whole life. It's since they don't have the foundation of that Afghanistan when it was better, it gives them less of a incentive to fight, because there's nothing that they're fighting for. I mean, that's what they feel like. I don't actually believe in that. There is something to fight for. And even though I've noticed that the trauma of people who lived through the 60s, 70s, and 80s, or even earlier, the trauma of those people is very deep and it's very complicated, because they have lost everything, and their lives have completely changed, and they keep getting pushed, you know. I've talked to many people, I've talked to both of you about how older generations, how they're dealing with everything post August is very different than how younger people are dealing with it, you know. But at the same time, even though their trauma is more complicated and their pain is more deeper, and some of them have numbed themselves and shut themselves out, doesn't matter where they are, at least they remember Afghanistan. They remember something that they love. They remember who they are. The younger generation doesn't have that to the same extent.
Yeah.
And I think with the media and having social media and all of this bullshit, they're constantly hearing the rhetoric that's told all over the world, and they start hating where they come from, and they start seeing, oh, well, it looks really nice in Austria. People walk around without chadar and heels, and they get to go to school. I wish it would be like that for me, without understanding why there is the differences between Afghanistan and Austria. And I see a lot of anger. I'm like a lot of anger from younger generations towards their country. They're close to hating it at times, but then there's always this little spark that they won't let anyone say something bad about it, or they will defend it at the end of the day. And we have to hold on to that, I guess. But there's something soft about this generation.
I think this generation, even the previous generations actually, but Afghanistan has been going through, like, in my opinion, I feel like Afghanistan is kind of the shadow, the collective shadow of the world. So everything that happens on a global scale is intensified in Afghanistan. So, for example, in the 60s and 70s, when you had, for example, Marxism and communism was on the rise, even American hippies, you know, they were Marxists. You had that happening in Afghanistan on 100 times more intense scale, you know, with the Khalqis and Pahlavis versus, you know, the religious people. So everything that happens in the world, I think it reflects in a more intense way in Afghanistan. And the reason why you have the Taliban right now in Afghanistan is very interesting to me, because when I was going through the internet, I noticed a lot of young white frustrated men. They love the Taliban. And I think the Taliban are kind of a metaphor for what a lot of young white men around the world are feeling right now. And
well,
I think it,
yeah. Wouldn't that make sense? Because who helped make the Taliban was angry little piece of shit white men.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, exactly. And you see all these frustrated young white men who don't not know how to interact with women, like, you know, incels. They even have their own like meme pages about the Taliban, and they love them, and they even interact with them on Twitter. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, like, this is so much more than just Afghanistan. Afghanistan is where this plays out. It's like the stage where the collective consciousness plays out, but everything that's happening in the world has to do with it. And at the end of the day, this has to do with toxic masculinity and patriarchy, you know? And that is a global phenomenon that is being played out on the stage that is in Afghanistan, because in my opinion, Afghanistan is the shadow, you know, the collective consciousness that the world plays out there. And it's interesting because why is it that every great, you know, in Asia, every great warrior race in Asia and Europe ended up in Afghanistan, and we have the descendants there all living with each other in one place. We're all having to figure out how to stand each other, you know, how to live with each other. And I find it so interesting that we have this dynamic happening there.
Well,
can I go back? Yes, please.
We've talked about this a lot, and I'm not coming from a nationalistic place or a patriotic place. I'm just coming from a place of having opened one or two books. That everything that has happened in global contemporary history is directly or indirectly associated to Afghanistan. Basically, kind of what you said, Aisha, right? Every time something big happens in Afghanistan, it ripples through the whole world, right? Because
why did
the U.S.
poetry ripple through the world? Why? It's very interesting when you even think about how Rumi's poetry is from, you know, Afghanistan. Like, why is it that this country, you know, things from it, it's literally, you know, Dile Asya, it's like the heart, you know, of Asia, and it ripples out everywhere, everything that happens here. Sorry,
we were part of the basis of civilization, and I think when you have such a long history, that has something to do with it. But every war that's been fought in Afghanistan has made a very big shift in the world. Like, I don't know why we're so focused on, I do know why we're so focused on taking the story of the Russians and making it a very big wank off for capitalism and immigrating from Afghanistan and things like that, when actually we should be looking that we were used as a proxy war that actually toppled one of the biggest empires to have ever existed on earth, that was very strong. and they wasted billions of dollars trying to do what they were doing in Afghanistan. And then the whole USSR crumbled, and now no one will ever speak about communism. And I'm not saying that the USSR got communism correctly, but the shift from 89, 90, 91, 92 in the world to just full force capitalism is directly because of Afghanistan. And
Yeah.
as much as we can say, oh, the martyrs, and one was fighting for a communism that wasn't associated to the Russians, and one was fighting for their religion, and one was fighting for God knows what, we can honor those martyrs while still thinking about the fact that the proxy war was used to hurt everyone on earth. Because now look at the state of the world. Look at what's happened in the past 20, 30 years is disgusting. And the knot of problems that we have gotten bigger. It's gotten bigger. And now this new Taliban shit is it's gonna be a new era for everyone as well, you know? So this is just why everyone needs to actually study the history of Afghanistan. And it shouldn't just be Afghans, because every fucking problem that exists, indigenous land back, problems between ethnic groups, fucking religion and patriarchy, all of these things are happening in Afghanistan. And since we are the kind of, we turn the tides on things in the world, it's important that we know everything that's going on and why that's happening.
Yeah.
Why are we so fixated on ghairat when we're being used constantly? I mean, I don't find that ba ghairat to be just a fucking pot.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Because that's why we are so fixated, and why shouldn't we be fixated? It's because if you find actually the essence of ghairat, what ghairat actually should stand for, then it would be actually very useful to fight against all this that we have been speaking about.
Right.
You know, because I can go back to our first questions about for the love of country or family. You know, and we agreed that okay, one reflects on the other. It's all kind of a connecting thing which goes on. But then at the same time, we can look at it as a fundamental problem, because your family could represent your tribe, and a lot of people have that ethnic, as you call it, fascism, you know, and there's a lot of it to do that people are holding grudges against their land, against their own people, because of what happened to their own families. Mm-hmm. Some people hold grudges against their land and don't care about it or don't defend it because they just hate their family, right? So I think if it was me, I love my country because of my family. Now I will fight for my family first, right? I need to save my family first. There is a fire burning in my area and all the houses are on fire. Religion and culture and honor tells me to save my family first and then go help the others, right? So in that very thing, it all starts at home. At least that's what I believe. We shouldn't lose the passion for our own country because there's nothing to fight for, or there's nothing left to fight for, or I can't see anything for it. And you were speaking about India. India is a great example. They didn't just fight 50 years; they fought for almost 300 years. There's so many heroes that died. No one knows about their name, and they started that whole thing. If they would have taught the same thing, and for me this is very important, the fundamental thing is to fire up the people, Afghana, ghairat and honor. We need to wake that up, and that's where the whole thing will start and finish with. Yes, please.
Well, everything that we've been saying also, even though family to then community, then to country, that's the way the succession goes, it still starts with the one unit, which is the individual. And there is plenty of problems in Afghanistan and with its people outside of Afghanistan that start with the self. Something that I talk about all the time, and I will defend it always, and it's not something that I get a lot of shit for it, is I don't like the way that Afghan women look at Afghan men and how they treat Afghan men and how they speak about Afghan men on a general level. And why would they talk the way that white people talk about our men? Maybe because there's something inside them that has pain that makes them project onto all Afghan men. So when you use this example of the fire burning and you would save your family first, what if you were completely destroyed on the inside and you hated your family because you resented them for doing one thing, second thing, third thing, and you wouldn't even save them, you would just save yourself. So it has to start with the individual, and that, I think, in a lot of ways is harder, because there's a really great book by Gloria Steinem that's called Revolution from Within, and it talks about how empathy and self-love is the foundation for you to be any type of revolutionary in any capacity. You can't do it without that. And I think that's really true, that book really changed the way I saw my own politics and how I saw the world. But if you have self-hatred, if you hate your identity, if you have problems with your family, if you have trauma, you will not just bleed it all over trying to fight for your country, if you can even do that with that much baggage, but you're going to bleed it everywhere all day long. That's what hurt people do. They hurt other people.
Yeah.
Sometimes some.
Well,
you see that
and the Afghans say that خود شناختن خدا شناختن است. That's a very big thing.
Exactly.
That's a very yes, please, Aisha John.
Oh, sorry. I was saying how you see that on Twitter. You see, at least in the Afghan community, even on Instagram, the way that we hurt each other, you know. And it's why I took a break recently from Instagram and Twitter, because I realized, you know, this isn't healthy for me, and it's also not really reflective of how healthy Afghans are. They're not the ones on Twitter doing things like that, or on Instagram, and you know that they're a very small community. That's not the actual Afghan community, and it's important to remember that the actual Afghan community is way bigger than what you see on Instagram and Twitter.
Of course.
And it's not as divided as what you see here. Afghanistan, there is ethnic tension, but at the same time, your neighbor here is Tajik, your neighbor here is Pashtun, over there Hazara. You're all in the same neighborhood. You see each other every day. You buy your bread from your Tajik, you buy your meat from an Hazara. Like, you see each other constantly every day. And of course, you can't say every single person in Afghanistan is kaum parast. You know, the average Afghan just is trying to, you know, make a living, and the average Afghan that is a poor Afghan working from morning to night with every other they're working with every other Afghan from every other ethnic group around them, putting bricks on the ground, doing, you know, menial jobs together, trying to cross the border into Iran, trying to do anything to make ends meet. And you see them, you know, like the refugees that you see in Turkey, all huddled up together in rooms from every ethnic group. Those people are not, those are the actual Afghans. You know, it's not us privileged Afghans here fighting with each other all day over, you know, stupid, you know, like, you know, ethno-fascist shit. You know, the people there, they see each other as humans and as brothers, like the average people there. You know, and I think it's
beautiful. Bravo.
Very well.
Bravo.
Yeah. Exactly.
Bravo. See that you get applauses from Shamayel John and her Uzbeki gold churi. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I would look. There's a lot of things that we haven't been able to even as we say سرشان باز کنیم. We haven't really opened any jars today, but because it's past midnight for you, Sister Aisha John, obviously if you had time in the future, I would love to discuss a lot of things which would in depth. We will go into the psychology of men and women of Afghanistan, children, the effects of war, immigration, the refugee lifestyle, and all that, which affects your actual psychology, and of course in-depth stuff, which we have our own traumas, if it's narcissism or personality disorder. بفرمایید محترم.
And also, we would like to do the thing, we wanted to do the last decolonial therapy chapter here.
Yes.
Which would be
sure. Okay. That was our plan. That was actually how we wanted to do it. But because there's so much wisdom in you too, and I have so much to learn, so I can't stop myself from asking things. And the beauty of wisdom and intellect is that when you ask something and the answer or the reply satisfies you, and from every angle, that makes it very fulfilling, right? So I want to know more. I want to know more. Like a good teacher, you two are beautifully smart and educated, and as a student, of course, I'm just loving this, enjoying this. But for now, I think, because again, it's too late for you, we don't want to keep you while you're very busy. But if you promise us that you will come back and educate us some more, I will let you go. Otherwise, we'll just hold you here.
Yeah.
You make the choice.
I'm down for it.
Yeah.
But are you going to test it?
Thank you very much.
He's gonna,
Sorry?
he's gonna test that, I'm sure.
Test you? Ah, who am I? Who am I to test you two? Who am I to test anyone?
Just a petition that, you know, if we do this repetition of history thing, what we need to do is talk about the repetition of history, which would, if anyone's watching this, I highly recommend looking at our decolonial therapy slides, all of them, and reading them, even though it's a lot and it's on fucking Instagram, but we had no other way of doing this. After
so interesting, yeah.
After we do the repetition of history, what we have is a proposal for solutions, because we believe that break these cycles. We're not impossibility, you know, we can fix this, and that's what we're really interested in talking about. That's how we wanted to conclude this whole thing that we've done, is how to fix ourselves to then fix the country.
Beautiful. I hope that inshallah bakhair, we would be able to do this. And obviously I'm always down for it. I will make time no matter what. I'm going on so many hours of sleeplessness that I don't even know if I exist anymore, or I'm just air, pure air. But yeah, I am down for it. And thank you very much. Last takeaways for our people, as per the talks that we did. Quickly, briefly, your message, personal message to our own people. Forget about Israel, Palestine, black and brown and Arab and whatnot. Honestly, I don't give a shit about any of them. I don't care about Khakbar Sarashan, Darbi Iran. I care about my own land and my own people. I'm very stupid, but I'm very nationalistic when it comes to that. So please, your message for your people. I will start with Aisha John.
I think my message to my people is you have to rediscover your history. You have to rediscover the rich history that you have, the amount of extraordinary people who are have contributed to your existence. Learn about your ancestors. You are so much more than this little blip in history that's happening right now. This, in the grand history of what this land has been, the many names that it has been, whether you call it Khorasan or Afghanistan, it's the same land at the end of the day. The name, you know, my mom calls me Aisha, sometimes she calls me Kusi, like she calls me different at the same time. You know? Like, I'm the same person.
I did not hear that.
And this is part of what you call it, you know. It's so, at the end of the day, it's been called so many names. I think that's the most trivial part that we're focusing on most, and we can address it later when there is some stability. We can come up with a better name for it if that's what some people want to agree on. But I think what's most important is to connect to this land, you know, connect to the people of this land, connect to your ancestors. And your ancestors are, you know, if you were to do a DNA test right now, you'd realize that you are connected to every ethnic group in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
You are not just Pashto, not just Tajik, not just, you know, Uzbek. You are connected to every group here. And, you know, have a wider perspective on who your ancestors are, you know. So yeah, like that would be my suggestion.
Beautiful, beautiful, very, very well put, Shamayel John.
I think
If you can top that,
no,
if you can actually top
I can't.
that. Okay, okay.
I'm not going to try to. I think if on an abstract way, if people stop looking at Afghanistan as something small and something hurt and weak, and look at it more, a bigger picture of it, but also what it means to the world and how we've shaped things that have been happening. If you get that kind of understanding, maybe you would understand how important it is, not just on a level of who you are, who your ancestors are, what is in your DNA, but also what a big impact it makes globally as a land and its people. And I find it incredibly simple to fall in love with Afghanistan. I think it's one of the easiest things you could do. But if you don't have that, you should probably get going on falling in love with Afghanistan, because unless you are coming from a place of deep love, unconditional love, which means that you accept it for the bullshit that it has too, you will not go anywhere. Because if you throw up your hands and give up after one problem that's happening in Afghanistan, well, guess what? We have dozens and dozens of more, you know? So when you make it, start with the self, have unconditional love for yourself, have unconditional love for your family, have unconditional love for your country, and then this whole shit becomes a lot more easier and tolerable and much more digestible, and you won't burn out, and you will actually help your people.
Beautiful. Before I put my little 2 cents, one of our friends, Russ Pitt, has commented, "Weapons of love, resurrection." I think that relates to the acid comment. So bravo for that. From a very, very illiterate and humble and Bache Kochai Kabul perspective, I would love to just say very short that find the real meaning of ghairat and honor in warrior. Find what makes you as an individual warrior without shedding blood, without violence. What spreads more love? What spreads more care? If you don't take care of your family, if you don't love your family, if you don't love your own nation, nobody else will. And I always say this. And when our love dies for our family, that's when our family breaks. That's when the people from outside will break into our house and take everything from us. And ghairat starts from love for your family. If you don't do it, nothing will work, nothing will change. Forget about everyone else and everything else. Care about your family. Start with yourself. Love yourself. Accept yourself. Accept your culture. Nourish it. This is Lamar from Voices from the Mountains, with my humble opinion. My beautiful guests today, my sister Aisha John. Thank you very much for being here. Hope to see you soon. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with us. We have a lot to learn from you. We're proud of such youngsters, such Afghan youngsters that we have. So bright, so smart, so open, and highly intelligent. Thank you very much. You make us proud. Shamayel John, thank you very, very much for being here. As usual, proud to have you. Honored to have you always. چوریای بسیار زیباست، بسیار شرنگس و عالی میکنه. Thank you very, very much.
It's always a pleasure to do a live with Bache Shama.
I shave, but I take it compliment. Thank you very much. My honor. I'm honored. Thank you. Love to you guys both. Enjoy your night. Have a good night. Enjoy your day. Love you both. Out. Thank you.